I'm leaving for someone responsible. Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest as I stood in our kitchen, watching Rhea stuff her designer clothes into that ridiculously expensive Louis Vuitton suitcase I'd bought her for Christmas. The morning light streaming through our Victorian home's tall windows made everything look surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. "He's more responsible?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Rhea, the man is 81 years old. He's 51 years older than you." She whipped around, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. "Hayes Rellin has more money in his checking account than you'll make in 10 lifetimes, Kai. He owns half this city." "And I own half this marriage," I shot back. "What does that make me?" "Poor," she said without missing a beat. I reached into my jacket pocket and pressed record on my phone. Old habits from my IT security days. Always document everything. Rhea was too busy folding her silk blouses to notice. "You know what's funny?" I said, leaning against the doorframe. 3 months ago, you were crying about how Hayes reminded you of your grandfather. Now he's Prince Charming? Things change. She zipped the suitcase with more force than necessary. People grow. Some people, anyway. And some people abandon their own mother and children for a sugar daddy old enough to remember the Kennedy administration. Her face flushed red. "Don't you dare judge me, Kai Dornell. You sit in that insurance office all day, adjusting claims for fender benders and kitchen fires. Hayes builds empires." "Hayes builds nursing home bills," I muttered. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back with that look, the one that used to make me want to fix whatever was wrong, back when I still thought our problems were fixable. "Your mother's medication is on the counter," I said quietly. "The physical therapist comes at 2. I already called your work and told them you'd be out indefinitely." For just a second, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance that I'd thought of details she'd forgotten. "I'll send for the rest of my things," she said. "Sure thing, I'll have them ready." The front door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the old windows. I stood there for a moment, listening to her car start up and drive away, then walked upstairs to check on Alma. Rhea's mother was sitting by her bedroom window, staring out at the street. At 68, Alma Jorvin was frail as tissue paper, but her mind was sharp as a razor. She'd moved in with us 6 months ago after her stroke, and Rhea had complained about it every single day since. "She left," Alma said without turning around. "Yeah, good riddance." Alma's voice was barely above a whisper, but there was steel in it. "That girl's been trouble since she could walk." I pulled up a chair next to her. "She's your daughter. She's a fool." Alma turned to look at me, her pale blue eyes fierce. "And you're a good man, Kai. Don't let her make you forget that." I squeezed her hand gently. "I won't." But as I headed back downstairs, I was already making plans. Rhea thought she knew me, thought I was just some passive insurance adjuster who'd roll over and let her walk away with half of everything we'd built together. She had no idea what I was capable of when I put my mind to it. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli, my drinking buddy, and the closest thing I had to a best friend. Heard Rhea's car peeling out. "Everything okay?" I typed back, "Everything's perfect. Meet me at Murphy's tonight. I'm buying." Then I sat down at my laptop and got to work. Rhea wanted responsible? I'd show her responsible. I'd be so responsible, she'd wish she'd never heard the word. First stop, our joint bank accounts. As an IT security consultant turned insurance investigator, I knew exactly how financial systems worked, and more importantly, how they could be manipulated within legal boundaries. Rhea had always been careless with passwords, using the same one for everything. Hayes 2023. She'd changed it 3 months ago, right around the time her friendship with Hayes Rellin had gotten serious. How's that for responsible? Using your boyfriend's name as your banking password. I transferred every penny from our joint accounts into a new account I'd opened that morning, completely legal, since both our names were on everything. Then I called our credit card companies and reported the cards lost, requesting new ones sent to my office address only. My phone rang. "Rhea." "What did you do?" she screamed before I could even say hello. "Good afternoon to you too, sweetheart." "My cards aren't working. The bank says the accounts are frozen." "Not frozen," I said calmly, pulling up the account information on my screen. "Transferred to a new account. For security purposes." "You can't do that?" "Actually, I can. Joint account holder privileges. I'm being responsible with our money, just like you wanted." The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. Then, "I'm calling my lawyer." "Give Bridget my regards," I said, and hung up. Bridget Chen was Rhea's best friend and enabler, a paralegal at Morrison, Klein & Associates who thought she was a lawyer because she'd watched every episode of Law & Order. She was also the one who'd been encouraging Rhea's affair with Hayes for months, probably hoping to get some of that old man money for herself. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to the managing partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates. I'd done some insurance work for them last year after a break-in at their offices, which meant I had the inside scoop on their internal policies. Dear Mr. Morrison, I wrote, I thought you should know that one of your employees has been using company resources to conduct personal legal business. I attached screenshots of Bridget's work emails, the ones she'd been stupid enough to send from her company account, discussing Rhea's divorce strategy and Hayes Rellin's legal vulnerabilities. I'd gotten access to them 6 months ago when Rhea had asked me to help fix Bridget's slow computer. Amazing what people leave lying around in their email when they think nobody's looking. Send. My phone buzzed with another text from Eli. Seriously, man, you okay? Saw Rhea posting yacht photos on Instagram. I clicked over to Rhea's Instagram account. Sure enough, there she was, posing on the deck of what looked like $1 million yacht, wearing a bikini that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The caption read, Finally living my best life with someone who knows how to treat a woman right. Blessed, Chandro, new beginnings, the responsible man. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The hashtag made me laugh out loud. Hayes Rellin, responsible. The man had been married 4 times, been investigated by the SEC twice, and was currently being sued by 3 different business partners. But he had money, and to Rhea, money was the same thing as responsibility. I screenshot the post and saved it to a folder I'd created called Evidence. Then I opened a new browser window and started researching Hayes Rellin's business dealings. If Rhea wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew all the rules. What I found made my day considerably brighter. Hayes Rellin might own half the city, but he also owed money to some very serious people. His real estate empire was built on leveraged debt, and according to the public records I could access, he was about 3 months behind on payments to several major creditors. No wonder he was interested in my wife. Rhea worked at First National Bank as a loan officer, with access to all kinds of financial information and the authority to approve loans up to $500,000. She probably thought she was trading up to a sugar daddy, but Hayes was looking for a financial lifeline. This was going to be even more fun than I'd thought. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up what I like to call insurance policies. Automated systems that would monitor Rhea's financial activity, alert me to any legal filings involving my name, and track Hayes Rellin's business dealings through public records. By the time I was done, I'd know about any move they made before they finished making it. At 6 o'clock, I heated up some soup for Alma and helped her with her evening medications. She was having one of her good days, alert and talkative. You're planning something, she said as I handed her the pills. What makes you say that? You've got that look, same look you had when you figured out who was stealing from the church fund last year. I'd forgotten about that. The treasurer had been skimming donations for months before I'd caught him by setting up a simple tracking system. Nothing illegal, just good old-fashioned detective work. Maybe I am, I admitted. Good. Alma patted my hand. That girl needs to learn there are consequences for her actions. I raised her better than this, but somewhere along the way, she forgot. You raised her fine, Alma. Some people just choose to be selfish. And some people choose to fight back. She looked at me with those sharp blue eyes. Just promise me you won't do anything that'll land you in trouble. I promise. Everything I'm doing is completely legal. Legal and smart are 2 different things, Kai. Then it's a good thing I'm both. She laughed. The first real laugh I'd heard from her in weeks. Go on, get out of here. Go meet that friend of yours and celebrate your freedom. Murphy's Bar was exactly the kind of place you'd expect to find in our neighborhood. Dim lighting, cracked leather booths, and a bartender named Murphy who'd been serving drinks since the Carter administration. Eli was already there when I walked in, nursing a beer and scrolling through his phone. Eli Kowalski was a private investigator specializing in insurance fraud, which was how we'd met 3 years ago. He was also the only person I knew who was more cynical about human nature than I was, which made him excellent company. You look way too happy for a man whose wife just left him, he said as I slid into the booth across from him. That's because I am happy. Okay, I'll bite. Why? I signaled Murphy for 2 beers and leaned back in the booth. Because Rhea just made the biggest mistake of her life, and she doesn't even know it yet. Please tell me you're not planning anything stupid. Define stupid. Anything that involves me having to visit you in prison. Then no, I'm not planning anything stupid. I'm planning something brilliant. I filled him in on the day's events. The The bank account transfers, the email to Morrison, Klein & Associates, and my research into Hayes Rellin's financial situation. Eli listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. "So let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Your wife left you for a broke octogenarian who's probably using her for bank access, and you've already started dismantling her life?" "That's a very accurate summary." "And you're sure this Hayes guy is broke?" "Not broke exactly, but definitely cash poor and debt heavy, the kind of financial situation where a friendly loan officer could be very valuable." Eli grinned. "You know what? I like it. It's devious without being illegal, and it serves them both right." He raised his beer. "To responsible men everywhere." "To responsible men," I agreed, clinking my bottle against his. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message on speaker. "Kai, this is Hayes Rellin." The voice was gravelly, with the kind of old-money accent that screamed private schools and country clubs. "I think we should talk, man to man. I'll be at the Riverside Grill tomorrow at noon. I hope you'll join me." Eli whistled low. "The old man wants to meet." "Apparently." "You going?" I thought about it for a moment. Hayes Rellin was used to getting his way through money and intimidation. He probably figured he could buy me off or scare me into backing down. What he didn't realize was that I'd been dealing with fraudsters and scam artists for years, and I'd gotten very good at it. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think I am." "Want backup?" "Nah, this should be interesting enough on its own." We spent the next hour planning my strategy for the meeting with Hayes, and by the time I got home, I was feeling better than I had in months. Rhea thought she'd won by leaving me for a richer man. What she didn't understand was that she'd just given me the motivation I needed to remind her why underestimating me was always a mistake. I checked on Alma one more time before bed. She was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady and strong. Whatever happened next, I was going to make sure she was taken care of. Unlike her daughter, I actually understood what responsibility meant. As I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with one final message of the day. It was from Rhea. "We need to talk about custody arrangements." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Her response came immediately. "I'm being perfectly reasonable. Hayes thinks—" I turned off my phone without reading the rest. Whatever Hayes thought, he was about to learn that some men don't back down just because you wave money at them. And Rhea was about to discover that leaving someone doesn't automatically mean you get to control the terms of your departure. Tomorrow's meeting with Hayes Rellin was going to be very educational. For both of us. The Riverside Grill was the kind of restaurant where they didn't put prices on the menu and the waiters wore ties that cost more than my monthly car payment. I'd been there exactly once before, for Rhea's birthday 2 years ago, and I'd spent the entire evening feeling like everyone was staring at my off-the-rack suit. Today, I didn't care what anyone thought. I was here for business. Hayes Rellin was already seated when I arrived, holding court at a corner table with a view of the river. He was exactly what you'd expect from an 81-year-old real estate mogul. Silver hair, perfectly styled, expensive suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and the kind of confident posture that came from decades of getting his way. Sitting next to him was a younger man I didn't recognize, built like a linebacker and wearing a suit that couldn't quite hide the fact that he was probably carrying a weapon. Hayes's muscle, no doubt. "Kai!" Hayes stood up as I approached, extending his hand like we were old friends. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." I shook his hand, firm grip, no surprises there, and took the seat across from him. The muscle stayed standing, positioning himself where he could watch the room and keep an eye on me at the same time. "This is Mason," Hayes said, gesturing to his companion. "He handles security for my various enterprises." Mason nodded, but didn't speak. Professional Intimidation, Chapter 1. I'd seen it before. "Nice to meet you both," I said, settling into my chair. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious about why we're meeting." Hayes smiled, the kind of practiced expression that probably worked wonders at charity galas and city council meetings. "I think you know why we're here, Kai. Rhea's told me about your situation." "My situation?" "The divorce proceedings, the financial complications. I understand you've been making things difficult," I laughed, which clearly wasn't the reaction he'd been expecting. "Difficult? I transferred money from joint accounts that have my name on them. That's not difficult. That's Tuesday. You froze her out of accounts she needs access to. I secured assets that belong to both of us until we can work out a fair division. That's what responsible people do." Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Rhea mentioned you like that word. Responsible." "It's a good word. You should try it sometime." Mason shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of shoulder holster under his jacket. Hayes noticed me looking and smiled. Mason's very good at his job, Hayes said casually. He's been with me for 15 years. Completely loyal, completely reliable. That's nice. I had a dog like that once. The smile faltered for just a second. Hayes wasn't used to people who didn't intimidate easily. Let me be direct, Kai. Rhea is important to me, very important, and I don't like seeing her upset. Then maybe you shouldn't have started an affair with a married woman. Rhea came to me, Hayes said, his voice taking on a harder edge. She was unhappy in her marriage, unfulfilled. I simply offered her what you couldn't. A trust fund and a heart condition? Mason took a step forward, but Hayes held up a hand to stop him. You're angry, Hayes said. I understand that, but anger won't change the facts. Rhea has moved on. The question is whether you're going to make this easy or difficult. For who? For everyone involved. I leaned forward, matching his stare. Here's what I think, Hayes. I think you're in financial trouble. I think you need access to someone with banking connections and loan approval authority, and I think Rhea was stupid enough to fall for your act. Hayes's face went very still. That's an interesting theory. It's not a theory. I've seen your public filings. Leveraged debt up to your eyeballs, 3 major lawsuits pending, and creditors circling like sharks. You don't want Rhea for her sparkling personality. You want her for her access to First National's loan department. You've been busy. I'm very good at research. It's what I do for a living. Hayes signaled the waiter for another drink, taking his time before responding. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and measured. Even if your theory were correct, he said, it wouldn't change anything. Rhea is with me now. She's made her choice. And I've made mine. Which is? I stood up, dropping a 20 on the table for my untouched water, to make sure she understands the consequences of that choice. Mason moved to block my path, but I'd expected that. Instead of trying to go around him, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Excuse me, I said loudly enough for other diners to hear. Could you please move? I'm trying to leave. Mason looked uncertain, glancing at Hayes for guidance. The last thing they wanted was a scene in a public restaurant, especially one frequented by the kind of people who might recognize Hayes Rellin. Hayes nodded, and Mason stepped aside. This isn't over, Kai, Hayes said as I walked past. No, I agreed. It's not. I made it to the parking lot before my hands started shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. Hayes Rellin thought he could intimidate me with his hired muscle and his old money connections. What he didn't realize was that I'd spent years dealing with people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Insurance fraudsters, identity thieves, corporate embezzlers, they all had the same basic flaw. They underestimated the people they were trying to scam. My phone rang as I got in my car, Marlene from the office. Kai, I just got a weird call, she said without preamble. Marlene Washington had been the office manager at Hartwell Insurance for 12 years, and she had zero patience for small talk. Weird how? Some guy claiming to be Hayes Rellin's assistant, asking questions about your work schedule and whether you handle any of his properties. What did you tell him? I told him to file a proper information request through legal channels like everyone else. Then I hung up on him. Good. If anyone else calls asking about me, do the same thing. You want to tell me what's going on? I gave her the abbreviated version, Rhea's affair, the divorce, and Hayes' attempt to intimidate me at lunch. That old snake, Marlene said when I finished. I've heard stories about him. Word is he's been having financial trouble for months. What kind of stories? The kind that come from my cousin who works at the city planning office. Hayes has been trying to get permits for a big development project, but he can't get the financing. Banks won't touch him. Interesting. Any idea why? Something about his previous projects. Cost overruns, safety violations, that kind of thing. My cousin says the city's getting tired of cleaning up his messes. This was getting better by the minute. Hayes Rellin wasn't just cash poor, he was toxic to legitimate lenders. No wonder he needed someone like Rhea. Marlene, I need a favor. I'm listening. Can you put together a file on any insurance claims we've handled involving Hayes Rellin's properties? Anything in the last 5 years. That might take a while. I've got time. I'll have something for you by tomorrow morning. I spent the drive home thinking about my next move. Hayes had shown his hand by trying to intimidate me, which meant he was more worried than he wanted to admit. The question was how to use that worry against him. When I got home, Alma was in the living room, working on a crossword puzzle. She looked up as I came in, studying my face. How did it go? About like I expected. He tried to scare me off. And I don't scare easy. She smiled. Good. That man's been getting his way for too long. Someone needs to remind him he's not untouchable. You know Hayes Rellin? I know of him. His family's been in this city for generations, thinking they own everything and everyone in it. His father was the same way, arrogant, entitled, used to buying his way out of trouble. Well, his son's about to learn that some things can't be bought. I helped Alma with dinner, then spent the evening setting up additional monitoring systems on my laptop. If Hayes was going to play games, I wanted to know about every move he made before he made it. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Last chance to be reasonable. HR. I showed it to Alma, who snorted. Reasonable, that's rich. Coming from him? I typed back, I'm being very reasonable. You're the one who brought muscle to a lunch meeting. The response came quickly. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you, I replied, then blocked the number. My phone rang immediately, a different number this time. You think you're clever? Hayes' voice was tight with anger. But you're playing in a league you don't understand. I understand it fine. Rich old man having cash flow problems hooks up with married bank employee. It's not exactly original. Rhea loves me. Rhea loves the idea of your money. Too bad most of it belongs to your creditors. The line went quiet for several seconds. Then, stay away from my business, Kai, and stay away from Rhea. Or what? You'll send Mason to intimidate me again? Maybe next time pick a restaurant where half the customers aren't carrying phones with cameras. I hung up before he could respond, then immediately called Eli. Hayes is rattled, I told him. He's making threats and sending messages. I think it's time to turn up the heat. What did you have in mind? Remember that story you told me about the developer who was cutting corners on safety inspections? Yeah, why? Any chance that developer was Hayes Rellin? Let me make some calls. While Eli worked his contacts, I opened my laptop and started researching Hayes' current development projects. What I found was a pattern of cost overruns, delayed permits, and safety violations going back 3 years. Hayes Rellin's empire was built on cutting corners and buying his way out of trouble, but apparently he was running out of money to buy with. My phone buzzed with a text from Rhea. Hayes told me about your meeting today. You're embarrassing yourself. I screenshot the message and saved it to my evidence folder, then typed back, just getting to know your boyfriend better. Interesting financial situation he's got. What's that supposed to mean? Ask him about his creditors. Or better yet, ask your boss at the bank why they won't approve his loan applications. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, you don't know what you're talking about. We'll see. I turned off my phone and went to check on Alma. She was already in bed, reading a mystery novel. Everything okay? She asked, looking up from her book. Everything's perfect. Hayes Rellin thinks he can intimidate me into backing down, but he's about to learn that some people fight back. Just be careful, Kai. Men like that don't like losing. Then he's going to hate what happens next. I kissed her forehead and headed to my own room, already planning tomorrow's moves. Hayes had made this personal by bringing muscle to our meeting and trying to threaten me. Now it was time to show him what happened when you picked a fight with someone who had nothing left to lose. Rhea thought she'd traded up to a better man. Hayes thought he'd found an easy mark to manipulate. They were both about to discover that their biggest mistake wasn't underestimating me. It was giving me a reason to fight back. And I was just getting started. Marlene had outdone herself. When I walked into the office the next morning, she had a stack of files on my desk that was at least 3 inches thick. Hayes Rellin's greatest hits, she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. 15 insurance claims in 5 years, totaling just over $2 million. I flipped through the files, whistling softly. Water damage, electrical fires, construction accidents. This guy's either the unluckiest developer in the city, or he's been filing fraudulent claims to cover his cash flow problems, Marlene finished. I was thinking the same thing. Any patterns? 3 of the electrical fires happened right before major loan payments were due. The water damage claims all involved properties that were behind schedule and over budget. And the construction accidents, she pulled out a specific file. Those all happened on projects where the city was threatening to pull his permits. I opened the construction accident file and started reading. What I found made my morning considerably brighter. Hayes had been filing claims for equipment damage and work delays that seemed to coincide perfectly with his financial difficulties. The insurance payouts had kept his projects afloat and his creditors at bay. Marlene, you're a genius. I know. What are you going to do with this? I'm going to be very responsible and make sure the proper authorities are aware of these patterns. She grinned. I love it when you get that look. I spent the next hour cross-referencing the insurance claims with Hayes' public financial filings and permit applications. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Hayes had been using insurance fraud to subsidize his failing business empire for years. My phone rang. Eli. "You were right about Hayes," he said without preamble. "My contact at the building department says he's been cutting corners for years. Substandard materials, unlicensed contractors, safety violations covered up with bribes. Any recent problems? His current project, that big development on the north side, is about to get shut down. The city inspector found structural issues that could collapse the whole building." "When?" "The shutdown order goes into effect Monday. But here's the interesting part. Hayes doesn't know yet. My contact says they're keeping it quiet until they can serve the papers." I leaned back in my chair, thinking. Hayes was about to lose his biggest project, which would trigger a cascade of financial problems. No wonder he was desperate to get close to Rhea and her banking connections. "Eli, I need another favor." "I'm listening." "Can your contact at the building department accidentally let slip to a reporter that Hayes' project is getting shut down?" "Probably. Why?" "Because Hayes is the kind of man who makes enemies. And enemies love reading about other people's failures in the newspaper." "You're evil. I like that in a friend." After Eli hung up, I called the state insurance fraud hotline and requested the proper forms to file a complaint about suspicious claim patterns. Everything I was doing was completely legal and proper. I was just being a very responsible citizen, making sure the authorities were aware of potential fraud. My phone buzzed with a text from Rhea. "We need to talk about the house," I typed back. "What about it?" "I want my half." "You'll get your half when we're officially divorced. Until then, the house stays as is." "That's not fair. I have rights." "So do I. And so does your mother, who's living here because you abandoned her." The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came. "I didn't abandon anyone. I'm building a new life. With a man who's about to lose everything he owns. What's that supposed to mean?" Instead of responding, I screenshot our conversation and saved it to my evidence folder. Let her wonder what I knew. Around noon, I decided to take a drive past Hayes' development project. It was a massive construction site on the north side of town, the kind of luxury high-rise that was supposed to revitalize the neighborhood. What I saw when I got there made me smile. The construction site was crawling with city inspectors and safety officials. Workers stood around looking confused, while men in suits and hard hats examined the building's structure. Hayes was there too, gesticulating wildly at a man with a clipboard who looked supremely uninterested in whatever Hayes was saying. I parked across the street and watched the show. Hayes was clearly agitated, his usual composed demeanor cracking under pressure. The man with the clipboard, probably the head inspector, handed Hayes an official-looking document, then walked away while Hayes was still talking. My phone rang. Unknown number. "You son of a—" Hayes' voice was shaking with rage. "Good afternoon to you too, Hayes. You did this. Somehow you did this." "Did what?" "The inspection. The shutdown order. This is your doing." I looked across the street at Hayes, who was pacing back and forth while shouting into his phone. "Hayes, I'm an insurance adjuster. I don't have the power to shut down construction projects." "Then how did you know?" "Know what?" "In your text to Rhea. You said I was about to lose everything. How did you know about the shutdown?" I hadn't actually known about the shutdown when I sent that text. I'd just been making an educated guess based on his financial situation. But Hayes had just confirmed that his empire was crumbling even faster than I'd thought. "Lucky guess," I said. "This isn't over." "You keep saying that, but from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty over." I hung up and drove back to the office, feeling better than I had in months. Hayes Rellin's carefully constructed world was falling apart, and he was starting to panic. Panicked people made mistakes, and I was counting on Hayes to make a big one. When I got back to the office, Marlene was waiting with a grin on her face. "You just missed an interesting call," she said. "Oh?" "Woman named Bridget Chen, calling for Morrison, Klein & Associates. Apparently she's no longer employed there." "What did she want?" "To yell at you about ruining her life. I told her you were out and took a message." Marlene handed me a slip of paper with Bridget's number and a message that consisted mostly of words I couldn't repeat in polite company. "She seemed upset," Marlene said with mock concern. "I can imagine." My phone buzzed with a call from Rhea. "Bridget got fired because of you," she said the moment I answered. "Bridget got fired because she was using company resources for personal business. I just made sure her boss knew about it. She was helping me with legal advice. She was helping you plan strategy against me using her employer's computers and email system. That's grounds for termination at any law firm." "You're destroying everyone around me." "I'm not destroying anyone. I'm just making sure people face the consequences of their actions." You know, being responsible. Rhea was quiet for a moment. Then, Hayes says you're behind his construction problems, too. Hayes is paranoid. His construction problems are the result of years of cutting corners and bribing inspectors. It was bound to catch up with him eventually. He's talking about taking legal action against you. For what? I haven't done anything illegal. He thinks you're harassing him. I had lunch with him once, at his invitation. If that's harassment, he's going to have a tough time in court. Kai, please, just stop whatever you're doing. Let's handle this like adults. I am handling this like an adult, Rhea. An adult who's not going to let his wife walk away with half of everything while abandoning her responsibilities. What responsibilities? Your mother, for starters, the kids, the life we built together. I can't help it if I fell in love with someone else. You didn't fall in love. You saw dollar signs and convinced yourself it was romance. She hung up without responding, which was probably for the best. I was getting tired of explaining basic concepts like loyalty and responsibility to someone who'd never understood them in the first place. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Check the evening news. Channel 7 is running a story about construction safety violations. I turned on the small TV in my office and waited for the evening news. Sure enough, the lead story was about Hayes Rellin's development project being shut down for safety violations. The reporter stood in front of the construction site, explaining how structural defects could have led to a catastrophic collapse if the building had been completed. Hayes appeared on camera, looking haggard and defensive as he insisted that the violations were minor and would be corrected immediately. The reporter pressed him about his company's history of safety problems, and Hayes's composure cracked completely. This is a witch hunt, he snapped at the camera. My company has always maintained the highest standards, and anyone who says otherwise is lying. The reporter mentioned that this was Hayes's third major project to be shut down for safety violations in the past 2 years, and that city officials were considering a review of all his current permits. I turned off the TV and leaned back in my chair, smiling. Hayes Rellin's empire wasn't just crumbling, it was collapsing in spectacular fashion on live television. My phone rang. Rhea again. Are you watching the news? Her voice was small and scared. I am. Hayes says it's all lies. He says his competitors are trying to destroy him. What do you think? Long pause. I think I might have made a mistake. Which mistake would that be? Leaving you. Leaving the kids. Leaving Mom. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy I used to have for Rhea when she was confused or scared. Then I remembered her packing her designer clothes while her mother sat alone upstairs, and the feeling passed. Yes, I said quietly. You did. Can we talk? Really talk? About what? About fixing this. About me coming home. I looked around my office, at the files documenting Hayes's insurance fraud, at the newspaper clipping about his construction failures, at the evidence I'd been carefully collecting for weeks. It's too late for that, Rhea. Please, Kai, I know I messed up, but you didn't mess up. You made a choice. You chose Hayes and his money over your family. You chose to abandon your mother and your children for a man old enough to be your grandfather. Those weren't mistakes, they were decisions. I can change. I can be better. Maybe you can, but not with me. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside my office window, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere out there, Hayes Rellin was probably trying to figure out how to save his crumbling empire. Somewhere else, Rhea was probably crying into a glass of wine, finally understanding that her sugar daddy was actually a financial disaster waiting to happen. And here I was, sitting in my modest office, feeling more satisfied than I had in years. Tomorrow, I'd file the insurance fraud complaint against Hayes. Next week, I'd finalize the divorce papers that would leave Rhea with exactly what she deserved, nothing. Rhea had wanted a responsible man. She just never understood that truly responsible men don't let people walk all over them without consequences. They fight back, methodically and completely, until justice is served. And I was just getting started. The insurance fraud complaint I filed against Hayes Rellin was a thing of beauty. 27 pages of documented patterns, financial correlations, and timeline analysis that painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning 5 years. I hand-delivered it to the State Insurance Commission on Friday morning, along with copies of all supporting documentation. This is very thorough, the investigator said, flipping through the file. Where did you get all this information? Public records, mostly. Insurance claims are a matter of public record if you know where to look. The rest came from cross-referencing financial filings and permit applications. And you're in the insurance business yourself? Insurance investigation, yes. I specialize in fraud detection. He nodded, making notes in the file. We'll review this and determine if a formal investigation is warranted. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Just doing my civic duty. I was walking back to my car when my phone rang. Hayes, of course. You filed a complaint against me, he said without preamble. I filed a complaint about suspicious insurance claim patterns. If you think it's about you, maybe you should examine your conscience. This is harassment. This is citizenship. When I see potential fraud, I report it. That's what responsible people do. I'll destroy you for this. With what? Your construction company that's being investigated for safety violations, your development projects that are getting shut down, your creditors who are circling like vultures? The line went quiet. Then, what do you want? Now, I want you to leave my family alone. Rhea chose to be with me. Rhea chose what she thought was your money. Now that she knows you're broke, how long do you think that choice will last? I'm not broke. You're leveraged to the hilt, behind on payments to major creditors, and about to lose your biggest project. In my business, we call that broke. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, older, more tired. What would it take for you to drop the insurance complaint? Nothing you can afford. Try me. I thought about it. Hayes Rellin had spent his entire life buying his way out of problems, and he still thought money could fix everything. It was time to teach him that some things couldn't be purchased. I want you to publicly admit that you've been having an affair with my wife, I said. I want you to apologize to my family for the damage you've caused, and I want you to stay away from Rhea permanently. That's impossible. Then enjoy your fraud investigation. I hung up and drove home, where I found Alma in the kitchen, making lunch. She looked up as I came in, studying my face. You look satisfied, she said. I filed a formal complaint against Hayes today, insurance fraud. Good. That man's been getting away with things for too long. She paused, then added, Rhea called this morning. What did she want? To talk to me, to explain why she left. And? I hung up on her. Alma's voice was matter-of-fact. I raised that girl to be better than this, but I can't force her to make good choices. She wants to come home. I know. She told me. Alma turned back to the stove. What did you tell her? That it's too late. Is it? I thought about the question seriously. 3 months ago, if Rhea had come to me with tears and apologies, I probably would have taken her back. But 3 months ago, I hadn't known what I was capable of when someone pushed me too far. Yeah, I said finally. It is? My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Turn on Channel 7, now. I switched on the TV just in time to catch a breaking news report. The reporter was standing in front of Hayes' office building, explaining that state insurance investigators had raided the offices that morning as part of a fraud investigation. Sources tell us that Hayes Rellin's company is suspected of filing false insurance claims totaling over $2 million, the reporter said. If convicted, Mr. Rellin could face significant fines and possible prison time. The camera cut to footage of investigators carrying boxes of documents out of the building. Hayes was nowhere to be seen, but his lawyer appeared on screen to give a statement about his client's innocence and cooperation with authorities. My phone rang. Rhea, crying. They arrested Hayes, she sobbed. I saw the news. They raided his office for the fraud investigation. He says it's all your fault. It's his fault for committing fraud. I just reported what I found. Kai, please. I need help. I don't have anywhere to go. You made your choice, Rhea. You chose Hayes over your family. Now you get to live with the consequences. I was wrong. I admit it, okay? I was stupid and selfish and wrong, but I can't undo it now. No, you can't. So that's it? You're just going to let me lose everything? You already lost everything that mattered. The house, the kids, your mother, your marriage. You threw it all away for a man you barely knew. The money was just a bonus, and now that's gone too. She cried harder. I don't know what to do. You could start by getting a job and finding your own place to live. You could try apologizing to your mother for abandoning her. You could figure out how to be a responsible adult instead of looking for someone else to take care of you. I can't afford my own place. I don't have any money. You have a job at the bank? Had a job. They fired me yesterday. That was news to me. Why? They said I was a security risk because of my association with Hayes. They're reviewing all the loans I approved in the past 6 months. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered her packing her suitcase while her mother sat alone upstairs, and the sympathy faded. Then you better start looking for a new job. Kai, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but you're right. You don't deserve my help. You don't deserve anything from me. I hung up and turned off my phone. Alma had been listening from the kitchen doorway. That was harsh, she said quietly. She earned harsh. Maybe, but she's still my daughter. And she's still my wife, technically. But that doesn't mean I have to enable her bad decisions. Alma nodded slowly. You're right. I keep hoping she'll figure out how to be the person I tried to raise her to be. Maybe she will, but she'll have to do it on her own. That evening, Eli came over with pizza and beer. We sat on my front porch, watching the neighborhood kids play in the street while their parents gossiped on the sidewalk. So what's next? Eli asked, opening his second beer. Next, I finalized the divorce. Rhea gets nothing except what the law requires, which isn't much since she abandoned the marriage. I keep the house, custody of the kids, and responsibility for Alma. And Hayes? Hayes gets to explain to a jury why he's been filing fraudulent insurance claims for 5 years. If he's lucky, he'll only get fines and probation. If he's not lucky... I shrugged. Well, orange isn't really his color. You know he's going to blame you for everything. Let him. I didn't force him to commit fraud, and I didn't force Rhea to have an affair. I just made sure they faced the consequences of their choices. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You destroyed my life for nothing. I showed it to Eli, who snorted. Hayes? Probably. Or Rhea. Hard to tell the difference at this point. You going to respond? Nope. Let them rage into the void. I've got more important things to worry about. As if on cue, Alma appeared in the doorway. Kai? Could you help me with something upstairs? I followed her up to her room, where she was sitting at her small desk with a stack of papers. I've been thinking about what you said, she began. About Rhea having to figure things out on her own. And you're right. But I'm her mother, and I can't just abandon her completely. She handed me a document. A will, I realized after a moment. I'm leaving everything to you, she said quietly. The house will be yours free and clear when I'm gone. My savings, my insurance policy, everything. Rhea made her choice, and now I'm making mine. Alma, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're the one who stayed. You're the one taking care of me. You're the one who understands what responsibility means. She patted my hand. Rhea will have to make her own way in the world. Maybe that's what she needs to finally grow up. I looked at the will, then at Alma's determined face. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That night, after Eli left and Alma was asleep, I sat in my living room and thought about everything that had happened over the past few weeks. 3 months ago, I'd been a married man with a comfortable life and a wife I thought I knew. Now I was about to be divorced, my wife's boyfriend was under investigation for fraud, and I was the sole caregiver for an elderly woman who'd become more family to me than her own daughter ever was. It should have felt like a disaster. Instead, it felt like freedom. My phone buzzed with one final message of the night from Rhea. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Sorry was just a word, and words were cheap. Actions had consequences, and Rhea was finally learning what those consequences looked like. Tomorrow, I'd call my lawyer and start the final divorce proceedings. Next week, I'd testify at Hayes' fraud hearing if they needed me. Next month, I'd be officially single and officially responsible for building a new life. But tonight, I was just going to sit in my quiet house, listening to Alma's peaceful breathing upstairs, and enjoy the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the good guys actually win. Rhea had wanted a responsible man. She just never realized she already had one until it was too late to matter. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October, exactly 4 months after Rhea had packed her designer suitcase and walked out of our lives. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of documentation that told the story of our marriage's spectacular collapse. Rhea was already there when I walked into the courtroom, sitting at a table with a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd lost weight over the past month, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a modest dress that looked like it came from a department store clearance rack. She looked up as I entered, and for a moment our eyes met. I saw regret there, and exhaustion, and something that might have been hope. Then I took my seat at the plaintiff's table and focused on my lawyer's final preparations. Remember, my attorney said quietly, this should be straightforward. She abandoned the marriage, abandoned her responsibilities to her mother and children, and committed adultery. The judge isn't going to be sympathetic. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to the law firm where Bridget used to work, was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd been handling family court for over 20 years. She reviewed our case file with the kind of thorough attention that made lawyers nervous and litigants sweat. "Mr. Dornell," she said, looking up from the papers, "you're seeking divorce on grounds of abandonment and adultery, with full custody of minor children and responsibility for Mrs. Dornell's mother. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mrs. Dornell, you're not contesting these grounds?" Rhea's public defender stood up. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges that the marriage is irretrievably broken, but we'd like to request consideration for spousal support and visitation rights with the children." Judge Morrison looked at Rhea. "Mrs. Dornell, according to these documents, you left your husband, your children, and your elderly mother to pursue a relationship with another man. Is that accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor." Rhea's voice was barely above a whisper. "And this other man, Mr. Hayes Rellin, is currently under indictment for insurance fraud?" "Yes, Your Honor." "I see." Judge Morrison made some notes, then looked back at Rhea. "Mrs. Dornell, can you explain to this court why you believe you're entitled to spousal support after abandoning your family responsibilities?" Rhea's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up a hand to stop him. "I'd like to hear from Mrs. Dornell herself." Rhea stood up slowly, her hands shaking. "Your Honor, I made terrible mistakes. I know that. I thought I was in love, but I was really I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt everyone who mattered to me." "That doesn't answer my question, Mrs. Dornell. Why should your husband be required to support you financially after you chose to leave him for another man?" "I don't have anywhere else to go," Rhea said, tears starting to flow. "I lost my job because of my association with Hayes. I can't afford an apartment. I've been living in my car for the past 2 weeks." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly overwhelmed by memories of Alma asking where her daughter had gone, of my kids wondering why Mommy didn't live with us anymore. Judge Morrison looked at me. "Mr. Dornell, what's your position on spousal support?" I stood up. "Your Honor, I'm willing to provide temporary support to help Mrs. Dornell get back on her feet. 3 months of basic living expenses, enough for her to find a job and secure housing. But I don't believe I should be required to support someone who voluntarily abandoned our marriage and family." "That seems reasonable." The judge made more notes. "Now, regarding custody and visitation," the hearing continued for another hour, covering the details of our financial settlement, custody arrangements, and Rhea's supervised visitation rights. Through it all, Rhea sat quietly, occasionally wiping tears from her eyes, but not arguing with any of the terms. When it was over, Judge Morrison delivered her final ruling. "The court finds that this marriage is irretrievably broken due to Mrs. Dornell's abandonment and adultery. Mr. Dornell is granted full custody of the minor children, with Mrs. Dornell receiving supervised visitation rights pending her demonstration of stability. Mr. Dornell will provide 3 months of spousal support in the amount of $1,500 per month, after which Mrs. Dornell will be financially independent. This court is adjourned." As people filed out of the courtroom, Rhea approached me hesitantly. "Kai, could we talk for a minute?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman standing in front of me was a shadow of the confident, ambitious person I'd married. She looked broken, defeated, and utterly alone. "What do you want to say, Rhea?" "I want to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I understand what I threw away." "Do you?" "I threw away the best man I've ever known for someone who was using me. I threw away my children's stability for a fantasy. I threw away my mother's trust and love for money that didn't even exist." She wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I threw away everything that mattered for nothing." "Yes, you did." "Is there any chance, any possibility that someday—" "No." I said it gently but firmly. "There's no going back, Rhea. Too much has happened. Too much trust has been broken." She nodded, tears flowing freely now. "I know. I had to ask." "The kids will need their mother in their lives," I said. "When you get yourself together, really together, not just temporarily stable, we can talk about expanding your visitation. But you'll have to prove that you've changed, not just say it." "I will. I promise I will." "Don't promise me anything, Rhea. Promise yourself. Promise your kids. Promise your mother." She nodded again, then turned and walked away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her go, feeling a complex mix of emotions: sadness for what we'd lost, relief that it was finally over, and something that might have been pity for the woman who'd destroyed her own life chasing an illusion. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "How did it go?" "It's done," I typed back. "Officially divorced as of 10 minutes ago." "Celebration drinks tonight?" Absolutely. I drove home to find Alma waiting in the living room, dressed in her best outfit and holding a small wrapped package. "How did it go?" she asked. "Exactly like we expected. The divorce is final, I have full custody, and Rhea gets 3 months of support to get back on her feet. And after that? After that, she's on her own." Alma handed me the package. "I wanted to give you this today, regardless of how the hearing went." I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small framed photograph of Alma and her late husband on their wedding day, along with a handwritten note. "To Kai, the son I never had but always wanted. Thank you for showing me what real family means." Alma, "Don't get sentimental on me," she said, but she was smiling. "I just wanted you to know that losing Rhea doesn't mean you lost everything. You gained something too." "What's that?" "You gained the knowledge that you're stronger than you thought, that you can stand up for yourself when it matters, that you're the kind of man who takes care of the people who matter to him, no matter what it costs." That evening, Eli and I met at Murphy's bar to toast my newfound freedom. The place was busy for a Tuesday night, filled with the usual mix of construction workers, office employees, and neighborhood regulars. "So what's next?" Eli asked, raising his beer. "Next, I focus on being the best father I can be. I take care of Alma. I rebuild my life on my own terms. And if Rhea tries to come back? She won't. And if she does, the answer is still no." We drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching the other patrons and listening to the jukebox play classic rock songs. Finally, Eli spoke up. "You know what I admire about how you handled this whole thing?" "What's that?" "You never tried to destroy her completely. You could have. You had the evidence, the connections, the motivation, but you drew a line and didn't cross it. She destroyed herself. I just made sure she faced the consequences. That's what I mean. You stayed on the right side of the line even when you had every reason to cross it." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your divorce. I hope you're happy now." I showed it to Eli, who shook his head. "Hayes? Probably. Though it could be Rhea or Bridget. I've made a lot of enemies lately." "You going to respond?" I deleted the message without reading it again. "Nope. My divorce is final. Hayes is facing federal fraud charges, and I'm sitting in a bar with my best friend celebrating my freedom. I'd say I'm pretty happy." "To happiness," Eli said, raising his glass. "To responsibility," I countered. We clinked glasses and drank, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Genuine contentment. The past 4 months had been a nightmare of betrayal, legal battles, and emotional warfare. But I'd survived it all, and more importantly, I'd won. Rhea had wanted a responsible man. She'd just never realized that responsible men don't let people walk away from their obligations without consequences. They fight back, methodically and completely, until justice is served and the people who matter are protected. I'd protected Alma, secured my children's future, and ensured that Rhea would have to face the consequences of her choices. Hayes Rellin was facing federal charges that would likely put him in prison, and his real estate empire had collapsed completely. Most importantly, I'd learned something about myself that I'd never known before. When pushed to the breaking point, I didn't break. I pushed back, harder and smarter than anyone expected. As Eli and I left the bar that night, I felt like a different man than the one who'd stood in his kitchen 4 months ago watching his wife pack her designer clothes. That man had been hurt, confused, and unsure of himself. This man knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. And that made all the difference in the world. The responsible man had won.